This is the IBJ podcast for the week of Monday, March 31st, 2025, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I'm not telling our regular listeners anything they don't already know, but for newcomers, here it is. Indianapolis leaders many decades ago made sports one of the main pillars of the city's economic development and tourism strategy. That focus has paid off in spectacular ways, including a deep history of surpassing expectations when hosting state, national, and international sports events. And let's just take this month, March 2025. The city has hosted the NFL Combine, the Big Ten men and women's basketball tournaments, the Midwest Regional for the NCAA Men's Championship, the Women's NIT Championship, several NCAA Division II national championships, and 9 Indiana Pacer games. Still to come, the Indy 500 in May, the WNBA All-Star Game in July, not to mention the Indiana Fever season, and the Big Ten's football championship in December. Our guest for this week's podcast is Neelay Bhatt, who was born in Mumbai, India, and didn't move to Indiana until 2006 after he finished a graduate degree in sports administration. He found a home here because he speaks the language of sports and developed a strong network of local sports executives. In 2023, he founded a consultancy in Carmel that focuses in part on master planning, strategic planning, and business planning, which it has been engaged to do for a massive sports and leisure destination in Portugal. Meanwhile, Bhatt has been a key player on the local organizing committees of the 2024 NBA All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis and the 2024 U.S. Olympic swim trials at Lucas Oil Stadium. His latest roles in the local sports community are co-chair and curator of TEDSports Indianapolis, the first ever TED event to focus exclusively on sports. Taking place September 9th through 11th in downtown Indy, it's expected to draw up to 1,000 executives, educators, and trendsetters from across the globe for a series of seminars and panels, workshops, and curated experiences. There also is a significant networking component, potentially generating new opportunities for the city. In this week's edition of the podcast, Bhatt discusses his upbringing in India, how he was influenced by his grandmother, who grew up in pre-independence India, how he became involved in the TED Talk ecosystem, and how he hopes Indianapolis can take advantage of TED Sports. Here's our conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome to the podcast Neelay Bhatt, founder and CEO of Next Practice Partners and co-chair and curator of TEDSports Indianapolis. I know you are super busy, so I appreciate you making time today.
Thank you for having me, Mason.
What I should have said at the beginning is namaste?
Namaste indeed.
Namaste, okay. For people who aren't familiar with this, about 10 years ago, you gave a short presentation for TEDx Indianapolis about the power of simply learning how to greet people who speak a different language. And we learned that the Indian word for hello is namaste.
Absolutely.
What was your goal in that talk?
So that was the opening talk for TEDx Indianapolis. And the idea was something simple. Having lived in India, worked across the world, Olympics, Disney, all the rest, that's the one thing I found besides the smile, which is, as we know, a universal language, that just a hello or a thank you in someone else's language instantly broke down those barriers. So it was something as simple as that, I am an immigrant here. And having seen that myself, I wanted to spread that idea with the world.
Mm. And so that also served as like the opening.
It did.
The opening
yes.
of the TEDx Indianapolis. Was it also kind of your introduction to the crowd? Or had you been in Indianapolis long enough at that point that you were really a known quantity?
I don't know about the known quantity part. I had been in Indianapolis in 2006. That's the year we beat the Patriots in the AFC Championship. I have never hugged so many random strangers in my life, and I take all the credit for being the lucky mascot.
You don't have to prove your Hoosier bona fides.
No more, no.
Name-checking sports, okay? It's a safe space.
Yes, indeed.
For folks who don't know what we mean by TED Talk, real quick, describe what that is.
Sure. So TED is the global platform for ideas, has been around since 1984. A lot of people have seen the TED Talks as these short 18-minute or now shorter clips as well. TEDx, which is what we've had in Indianapolis, is essentially the local franchise, if you would. So they are independently organized events by local organizers. There's over 3,000 of them in the world. So TEDx Indianapolis is where I got to speak, then coach, curate, co-organize, and then we also launched TEDx Indianapolis Women a few years later as well. So that in a nutshell is TED as technology, entertainment, design, and these talks, and TEDx as its local version.
Okay. Where did you learn English?
In India.
In India, okay. So you learned English or some sort of variety of American. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah, so, English is one of the 22 or so official languages of India. So I learned that with a few others. Yeah.
Whoa.
So it was probably my third or my fourth language. It's fairly common across the world. And when I came to America, I also realized that sarcasm is also a language. So that was very much an American learning for me.
Is there no sarcasm in India?
But it's not the same. It's so
Okay.
much more blunt in India. People will tell you, you put on weight, like you need to go eat less. Like no one says that. Yeah.
Nobody says, you might try the salad.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, but, I came to the US in 2003 and went from Mumbai to Athens, Ohio for Ohio University.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite a change as well.
So, and you went that because they had is it a sports management program?
That is
like
right.
A really good one.
It is. It's the first one in the world. It's the top ranked across the world over several years. And I was lucky at that time, the 40-year history of the program, I was the first student from India they ever accepted.
Wow. Okay. And that was at the master's level.
That was so it was a dual degree. It was an MBA and then a master's in sports administration. Still a great program, great alumni network. A lot of people in Indianapolis from that same program as well.
Okay. Interesting. So there's a good network.
There is, yeah. A few good friends. Eric Newberger runs Lucas Oil Stadium as well. Marty Bechtold with Pacers too is here as well. Some former alums, Barney Levingood, who ran the CIB.
Oh, sure.
It's all part of the Ohio sports mafia.
Thank you for naming it.
Yeah.
I was just curious because I'm so fascinated by American as a language,
Right.
And all the idioms, all of the idiomatic variants,
Sure,
of English that you can run across. Every industry has its own lingo. Like I would, if I wanted to join the tech industry, I would need to take a month.
Yeah.
With like a vocabulary book to understand what these guys are saying.
Sure.
And I have them on the podcast a lot.
Yeah.
I'm crossing my fingers most of the time. Do you think it was easier to be focused on sports because sports in a way is kind of an international language?
It would be, except American sports landscape is so much more complex and larger than any other place, right? So coming from India, cricket's a religion, but here it's baseball.
Right.
I had no idea about collegiate sports, much less the fact that if I'm in Ohio, I'm supposed to hate Michigan, right? But those rivalries run deep. Here at a lesser level, but IU, Purdue, all the rest as well. So it was more the nuances of all the acronyms. What's the NCAA? What is the SEC, right? What is the ACC? So those cultural learnings of those that have grown up with sports in the US versus somebody coming from the outside that may know the marquee names, but not a whole lot of the others, was more of the learning. And to your point, sports is still the most universal of languages with food and music, right? And so it became a lot easier to get acculturated and accepted into the space as well, thanks to the power of sports.
Got it. So you grew up in Mumbai?
Yeah.
Mumbai, India?
Yep.
Okay. And tell me about that. What was growing up there like?
Well, you've traveled all over the world. You've seen mega cities, right?
Not ones with 20 million people.
No, Manila's not bad either, right? And as you've been, but yeah, exactly. 20 million people. It's almost like this combination of New York and LA, right? It's like the city never sleeps. It's go, go, go. It's also the financial capital and the glamour capital and all the rest as well, right? So you got Bollywood and all that. So I went from that and 20 million people to Athens, Ohio, and 20,000 people, where maybe 200 look like me, and 199 of them were in the engineering or business school. And then there was me in sports. So
you grew up, I think it was I'm just remembering this from something that I read. Neelay Bhatt was in the IBJ, raised by 3 women. That was the way it was put.
You've looked up well. Yeah, so I grew up an only child, like Bear as well. And my grandmother, who was born in pre-independence India, my mom, my dad's younger sister, lived with us for the early years. And then my father was always present as well, right? So I'm very, very loving, very caring. Interestingly, my grandmother was born before India was independent. She was 16 before she lived in a free country. And so she sat as far as I'm sitting away from you right now as a teenager from Mahatma Gandhi, who came to her school to exhort her and her classmates to fight for India's independence. Mm-hmm. So that's how I was raised as well. In our house, if you walk in, and I live in the same home we lived in since 1937. So my kids are the 5th generation in that same house. We have a picture of Mahatma Gandhi in the living room, and her husband's picture is in the inside room. So
And I just get the impression that she made such an impression on you growing up. I mean, how did she contribute to who you are today?
Same thing, right? I think education and knowledge are 2 different things, right? Her self-worth was not tied to her degree. It was tied to her strong sense of dignity, respect, independence, basically making something out of absolutely nothing. It same carried on with my mom as well. My father passed when I was young. I was in my 20s and he suddenly passed. So my mom's been really strong carrying things forth, and my aunt as well. So I think all of them have, in their very independent individual ways, embodied what it's like to just be a very strong but empathetic human being. And I think that's something that I carry now with, my daughter as well, who's Annika is 7 going on 27. And I see that same fierce independent spirit, and I absolutely love it.
And then where did you go to college?
So in India?
Well, the name of the college.
Oh, so it was University of Mumbai in India as well. Did an undergraduate and a master's degree there, and then came to Ohio for a couple of them.
Mm-hmm. And then how did you end up coming to Indiana?
So I was probably the only person who went from Athens, Ohio to Athens, Greece. So I worked for the Olympic Committee then as well, and I lived in Greece for several months.
2004?
That was 2004, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So lived there for the Olympic and the Paralympic Games. And at that time, back to the Ohio connection, an older classmate of mine, Eric Newberger, who now runs Lucas Oil Stadium, connected me to who was then the head of the Indiana Sports Corps, Dale Newberger, who was also the assistant chef de mission of the U.S. Olympic team. So met him, connected with him, stayed in touch with him. After I left, I was working for Disney Sports in Orlando at the Disney Wide World of Sports. And Dale reached out to recruit me to a company here that I ended up coming to work for called Pros Consulting. And so that was my move to Indy. I'd only been here once before for the F1 race in 2004.
Right.
But I always knew Indy's reputation as a sports town. And that was a big hook to come here. So I came here, met my wife here, and then the rest is history. Never left.
Okay. So what did you do for Pros Consulting?
So Pros, the part that, as Dale was working on, that was working with a lot of the U.S. Olympic governing bodies as well. So the Olympic federations, and working with their business planning work. Pros also did a lot of work in strategic and master planning for park systems, helping shape the future of cities through parks, rec, grassroots sports. So that's really where I started off with a lot of the work I did, and then expanded into some of the organizational culture change, the guest service experience stuff, because of my Disney background and the pixie dust. And so that's really where it became the planning, training, speaking side, all of that.
Okay, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ Podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. With more than 800 attorneys in 8 primary Midwest markets and the District of Columbia, we provide solutions to the business issues facing middle market and emerging companies alike. We do this through a highly collaborative and inclusive team approach. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
All right, we're back with this week's edition of the IBJ Podcast. In my interview with Neelay Bhatt about bringing hundreds of leaders in the sports industry to Indianapolis for the first ever TEDSports Confab. And in 2022, you founded Next Practice Partners. And let me ask you first, what were you getting at with the name Next Practice Partners?
Yeah, I think I've always had this mindset of looking at things the way it's never been done before, right? So the whole idea is some of the hardest words in the English language is we've always done it this way, right? And among the shortest way to fail is embracing status quo. And so often I found the same thing with, this idea of best practices. And we've all lived through this with the pandemic. The world was never going back to the way you always done it after the pandemic, right? The idea of podcasts, just like this, becoming the absolute one of the go-to mediums how people are getting information and knowledge, wouldn't have thought of this 10 years ago. So the idea with Next Practices was how do we move beyond the way you always done it to embrace innovation in an inclusive way, hence the next practice, right? Once upon a time, Blockbuster was a best practice. It doesn't exist. They didn't evolve with the Netflixes of the world, and they got left behind. Netflix started with DVDs, and look where they are today with live streaming sports. So that's very much the mindset and the ethos as well, is how do we continue to focus on innovation, continuous improvement, but doing it in a way that you bring everybody along with you inclusively.
Who would your clients be? I mean, who do you target? I mean, is it specifically people in sports, or is it different?
It's been organizations looking to embrace what's next, looking to be innovative. And, it's been around the world as we speak. We're leading the largest sports center development in Western Europe on the south coast of Portugal. We're also working with municipal jurisdictions like the city, which is the headquarters of Google, Mountain View, California, the cricket capital of the U.S., Lauderhill, Florida, where they have the first international cricket stadium in Broward County. And then, closer to home, fortunately, it started with Indy Parks and Rec. We had done the previous plan when I was with Pros. Now with, the recent one as well, Phyllis Boyd and the team reached out. So we did the comp plan update. They had the Lilly Endowment, $80 million and all the support to develop that too. That led to other connections with the Indiana Sports Corps. And we got to lead the 25-year sports strategy, which is the 2050 vision, which is, again, transforming the whole state and our potential through sports. That led to the strategic planning for the Arts Council. And that led to also the strategic planning for the first time when CICF, Central Indiana Community Foundation, and the Indianapolis Foundation sort of separated and created their own entities, is the CICF plan. So we've been really, really fortunate, especially where you live, to be able to shape the future of parks, arts, sports, philanthropy all together has been very meaningful. So our clients are global bodies as well. And we're now partnering with TED as well to bring an event here. So it's been a great mix of entities, but it's all been focused on how do you position yourself to succeed in an ever-changing environment.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So I was hearing two things. One was helping companies kind of break out of the shell of here's what we always do. And then I was hearing strategic planning for big ideas and big events. Yep. And I'm guessing that you see them as being the same thing.
Yes, because, I see the planning part as being successful only if there is the implementation of the plan. And the most successful implementations come first with the shift in the mindset to embrace change, right? Look, change is a constant, we know it, but there's always going to be two choices. You can be a force for change, or you're going to be forced to change. And our goal is to help people feel empowered within organizations to be a force for change, to embrace next practices. And if they do that, that's when the organizational shift with the strategic planning, with the big ideas, with the master planning is what would come in.
Mm. And you started that in 2022.
Right.
It was right after you left Pros.
Yes.
Okay. And now it's 2025. I've done some crack investigative work and noticed there are at least, you have 7 people on the website.
Yeah.
Not including your kids,
yeah.
who are involved in
they
interesting ways.
Yeah, they are the user experience associates, right? They are the voice of the customers.
Yeah, it sounds like you've grown pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's been a good mix, right? So part of it is, from day one, my brother from another mother, Jason Elisaldi, has been with the company. He worked for Fortune 500 companies, helped an agency win a national gold medal in Oregon, and then moved here as well. And then as we're looking at different subject matter experts too, the work we do is so varied and so broad that there is no one individual that can do it all, right? So the idea is to get people who are all smarter than me, including both my kids. And, you surround yourself with good people and the rest takes care of itself.
Okay. Interesting. How easy is it to start a company like that?
Starting a company is never easy, right? I think it's the challenge and it's what you enjoy as well. I think like any entrepreneur will tell you, you are never off. It is 24/7. You're always thinking of what's next. But it's also very meaningful, right? When it's your own as well. So the city's been great. Like I said, the Sports Corps, Arts Council, CICF, Parks and Rec, so many other supporters have been wonderful from the beginning. And when you see the impact you have, that makes it all worth it, right? We're not here selling widgets. I'm not here selling sugared water. The work we do is literally changing lives.
Yeah. And it's just so very people focused. I mean, if you were making widgets, you would need to have your factory. You would need to have money to go buy supplies. You need to have people making the widgets for you. This kind of, I don't know what you call this kind of business. Is it a consultancy or is it?
It is. I mean, it is a consulting firm, right? As we think of next practice partners, but it's consulting, it's training, it's mindset shifting, right, etc. as well. So it is all of those, right, and then some.
Yeah. But very people focused.
Very people focused. Even while we have people embrace new technology like AI and all the rest, and we're starting to get a lot more into talking about those as well. It's still the idea that at the end of the day, there is no replacement for people.
So in the meantime, you've been very active in helping stage major sports events in Indianapolis. Most recently, NBA All-Star Weekend in 2024 and the U.S. Olympic swim team trials again last year. And you're doing all that while you're also getting a new company off the ground.
Again, it's one of those when you enjoy what you do, it doesn't feel like work.
Okay.
Right? Indy is such an amazing community. My very first volunteer experience here was geared for health with the Sports Corps during the corporate challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It was, again, collecting used sporting equipment to donate to schools and all the rest. And I've been part of the corporate challenge from the year I've come here, so like going on now 19 years. And I love just that sense of community and all the rest. And that's carried over, right? So, whether it's a Super Bowl or it's a smaller local event, Indy comes together like no other place does. And so that's helped me feel a sense of belonging as an outsider, back to the power of sports. It's been wonderful to connect. And as that's carried on as well, right? Last year with the All-Star, my son Keon is a huge basketball and Pacers fan, diehard Pacers fever, all the rest. So being able to see that also through now the eyes of your kids has been wonderful. And then, putting a swimming pool in an NFL stadium, if that's not a next practice, I don't know what is. So it was wonderful.
So what were your responsibilities for the swim trials?
So I was one of the committee co-chairs for the Indy experience. So the things that you saw outside, right, all around from the Eiffel Tower to activation on Georgia Street, creating a welcoming experience for people that were coming here as well. So it's not just the 30,000 every night that were packing the Lucas Oil Stadium. It was also the entire time outside. And how do we showcase what we know to be true, that Indy is a global city, and for the people around the world that live here to see themselves in the city as well.
Mm. So that included the 60-foot Eiffel Tower. That was a Capitol? Was it not Capitol? Or
it was at that right outside the convention center, right? So it was the
right,
Georgia and Capitol's intersection, basically. But yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
I have to tell you.
Yeah.
For my family, that was great.
We loved it. And we've been to Paris, and we went to the Olympics after that as well.
Mm.
I have to say, and I saw the swimming events there as well, right? It was the Olympic finals. It was great and all the rest. That was an event. What Indy did with the swim trials was an experience, right? It was like a rock show. It was like a mega sporting event. It was all that put together. And shout out to the Sports Corps folks as well, right? Sarah Meyer, Ashley Newbold, so many of the others who led that and did some outstanding work.
Yeah. What did you do for the All-Star game?
Same thing. So it was more the All-Star experience as well, right? So again, back to the idea that, in that case, we also worked with the International Center, the Immigrant Welcome Center, the Chamber as well, to actually get some statistics of things that you might not realize, that there are over 150 languages spoken in Indiana schools, right? There are employers from every continent that hire people that have operations in Indiana and Indy, things you just wouldn't think of, right? We've got the best airport, in North America for like 13 years and counting, but it's all these other things that we wanted to showcase as well as part of sort of the Indy experience with the All-Star, when you had attendees, media, fans from all over the world coming here.
Okay. So tell me then about TEDSports Indianapolis. Has there been a TEDSports event before, or is this the first one?
This is the first and only in the world. So TED's never had anything for sports before. TED has the global flagship event, which is in Vancouver. They have the TEDx's like we talked about. And they've done some specific ones like Countdown, which is for climate change. They just launched a couple of verticals, one for AI in San Francisco and another one now in Vienna, but there's never been one for sports. So TEDSports is the first and only global event as part of the TED platform for ideas. It just happens to be in Indianapolis.
So how did this come about?
Conversations over a year, and talking to the folks at TED as well to say, why not now and why not us? And, sort of the idea around doing a vertical for sports, they were looking at that. There were some conversations for other larger cities like LA, etc. too. Did have a relationship because of years of TEDx, so there was some trust there. And I think what really then also helped put this over the top is knowing that we have a sports ecosystem like none other, led with the sports core at the center. Right. So we had these conversations for months. They had a new event, TED Next, last year. And then from the sports core, Patrick Talty, Jeff Hens, Jim Perry, all of them, they came, met the TED folks. And they understand that we know how to put on big events. We know the power of ideas. And then just with our experience, understanding the TED ethos and what a TED experience is like, it's unlike any event or any conference. I think the combination of all of that really clinched the deal to say, we're going to do TEDSports, and it's going to be in Indianapolis.
And you've remained active in the TED's presence in Indianapolis.
Yeah, so, there was a pandemic pause as well, but right before that with, other TEDx events as well. Started a few years ago. Before I joined, I've been engaged since 2014. And then I have been part of the flagship TED event all over the world. So I've been in Arusha, Tanzania. I've been in Banff, Canada, in Vancouver. I've led the workshop for the global TED attendees and all that as well. So it's been both. It's been the local part and it's been the connection to essentially the mothership to see how and where TED is going. I think that combination together has helped a lot.
So it's not just been Indianapolis. You've been involved in the other events internationally.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way that I understood it is that this event is a collaboration among Indiana Sports Corp, Next Practice Partners, and the TED organization.
Correct.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what will it be? When I tell people, I'm going to the TEDx or the TED Sports event, what is that?
Yeah. And I think, so firstly, even that sort of almost slip of tongue, like you mentioned, right, is such an important nuance to understand. And I want people listening to sort of get that part is there are 3,300 TEDx's happening every year in the world. There is one TED Sports in the whole world, right? And that's here. So TEDx is usually at a one-day event. It's meant to just have local organizers, local speakers, or, connected issues. TEDSports is the entire world. So this is 3 days, September 9th, 10th, and 11th this year. And it's going to have 20 to 25 TED Talks, which are the main stage ones that you see. But the power of this is what happens outside of that, because there is a global community, TEDsters, sports folks, all the rest that will come here. And as part of that, you're looking at dine-arounds where there are curated themed dinners. You're looking at workshops. You're looking at discovery sessions. You're looking at off-stage sessions and just serendipitous conversations with the community and people that you may never otherwise interact. Like, I have done crazy things that I would never do otherwise. I've been part of a rock band. I have rappelled down a building. I have talked like a cat. And these are with Fortune 500 CEOs, people who have won Nobel Peace Prizes, people that are doing incredible work around the world. But it doesn't matter there because they're not looking at titles. They're simply looking at how much do you believe in the power of ideas to impact and change the world. And that's what we want to do in Indianapolis. with TEDSports.
Okay. What is the cost of doing this?
The cost of attending or the cost of
The
organizing?
cost of organizing.
It'll be a lot, and it'll be worth it as part of this. Because look, I think, a huge part of this is the experience itself. When somebody's coming here, it is at the Mura, the old National Center as well, right? So we have the entire venue booked for 3 days with all the activations, with everything that's going on. Once the attendees come here, everything is part of the experience. All the meals, workshops, things they sign up for as well. So want to create this immersive thing from the time they are planning to come here, they get to the airport, they drive in here, and they get through this whole 3-day thing, welcome parties, closing receptions, that they all feel like this is the greatest experience of their life.
Right. And then who pays for it? Who pays for staging this event?
So part of this is we're going to be looking at supporting the event financially, and then you have the tickets, you have the sponsors, you have the partners, both cash, value, and kind, all the rest are supported.
Mm-hmm.
And even before we pitched all this, our business community, as they do all the time, stepped up and said, we love new ideas, we want to support, we're going to be there as well. I hate getting into the time trying to name people because you always feel like I'm going to forget somebody.
Yeah, right.
But some of the early ones, right? Mario Rodriguez at the airport, always the innovator as well. Mel Rain, Spaces, Sports and Entertainment. Yes, we're on board as well. Doug Bowles, Alison Millangton, Speedway 2, CIB as well. Coles, all of them were on board from the very beginning.
These are groups that will participate.
And these were groups that were also willing to support the event as well, right? To say, in a variety of ways, right? That we're going to help promote the event. We're going to help activate it. We may host a workshop here. We may have an experience there, right? So it's everyone coming together to make this a magical experience.
So how do you know if this event is a success? How do you measure success for TEDSports?
So the immediate piece is going to be ensuring that we have the best ideas on the stage. Ultimately, that's what it all comes down to, is have the biggest speakers, the best ideas, and just to get a sense of reach. TED's channels have a monthly view of 370 million. Every month, that's the reach. TED Talks alone have been watched 28 billion times.
Mm-hmm.
So we will see in terms of success on the ground here, it's an exclusive event. So this is not going to be 5, 10, 100,000 people. It's 1,000 attendees that we want to curate from all over the world to be here. But then it's the amplification of the ideas around the world that will live long after the event is done.
For some reason, that totally did not occur to me. That the video from this event,
yes,
X amount of talks at least, will then be on that platform.
They will all be on TED.com. They'll be amplified by those channels.
Got it.
They will help inform and inspire change around the world, whether we're talking research in sports, sports technology, women's sports, right? New sporting events, venues, all of those things. We can be the incubator of the best ideas and things that can transform cities, can transform communities through the power of sport. It all starts on our stage in Indianapolis.
Is this supposed to be a one-off event, or are you going to try to do it annually or biannually?
So, right. This is right now the only event and the first one. The goal is to do this as an annual event as well, so that this becomes another one of the go-tos where you block this off on your calendar. And if you want the best ideas and the leading thinkers in the world around sport, you need to be at TEDSports in Indianapolis.
Right. So, okay, and it wouldn't switch locations. It wouldn't be like this year it's in Las Vegas.
No, right now it's us and it's exclusive. There may be others around the world, but for now, we're the only one.
And then what will be your role during TEDSports?
I am the giver of hugs and thank yous. That is my primary role. That is it. I'm just on a thank you spree and a hugging spree to say there's an incredible team, the LOC, as Indy always does. I will be helping some with sort of the curation part as well, to sort of bring together the thoughts, the ideas, the speakers, etc. And then helping coach and working with speaker coaches for the overall experience. But we've got, again, a fantastic team at Sports Tech HQ, and Jeff Hintz, Brian, Colleen, their team as well, with Sports Core 2, with all that they're doing. Jim Perry is the event director, so helping lead that as well. And then, of course, right, Patrick, Sarah, and I, as we're going through all of these. So there's going to be a huge team. And our role, again, collectively is to ensure this becomes a terrific experience. I will focus primarily on the overall experience along with the speaker, the ideas, the curation.
Okay. So you would be, and as I think you have done in the past, I mean, you'd be helping people shape their presentations. I assume that anybody who watches a TED Talk goes, I wonder if I could do that. What would I talk about? I mean, how would that work? What are maybe, say, the three things that you always want to impress on somebody who's going to do one of those talks?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think ultimately it is about an idea worth spreading, right? So it's not about you. It's always about the idea. So often people start with what can I speak about and then try to find the idea versus finding an idea and saying, am I the best messenger for the idea? What you really want to do with the talk is have people go on a journey with you when you start at a certain point before the talk starts. And when you take them to another point when the talk ends, they are never going to be the same people again. So to anyone looking at it, my only ask is think of what the idea is and then why are you the best person to deliver the idea?
Okay. Just what about the logistics of delivering the talk itself? I mean, a lot of people are uncomfortable on stage.
Sure.
And they need ways to figure out how to be comfortable. Introduce a little bit of movement.
Sure.
Introduce, some media.
Yeah. So there is, and this is, again, unlike any other conference, right? There's months of speaker coaching that happens as well, where they will go from the genesis of an idea to your script, to identifying the visuals, to the delivery. We also have and will have paid fact checkers. Everything you say is going to be checked before it is said. Because again, this is not just any conference. This is TED. These are going to be watched millions of times. I can't have you making stuff up. So when people go on this stage in Indianapolis at TEDSports, they've been coached, the content is verified, and then they're able to actually deliver it. That's the level of preparation that goes into every speaker. And they'll have between 8 to 13 minutes. So Mason, it's not a lot of time, but it's so much harder to distill everything down to a short period versus being able to speak for 1 hour. So it is a lot of preparation. You don't have a teleprompter. You're on stage.
Is that right? There isn't a teleprompter.
There's no
There's nothing to look
teleprompter.
at.
Well, you do. You have a countdown clock in front of you.
Well, I know, but you didn't tell you what to say.
No. And then when the time's done, the stage opens, you fall through no.
I think that's Mr. Beast.
Yeah, exactly. But no, so I think no teleprompters. You don't have your notes in your hand. You have to know your talk, right? And that's where the preparation comes in, right? When you have millions of people watching, what we tell every speaker is you owe them the respect of preparing enough to know your stuff and to deliver it because they're spending the time to be there or to listen to it going forward.
I cannot tell you how happy it makes me to hear that all of your presentations are fact-checked.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That as an editor for IBJ, that often is my job.
Absolutely.
And it is not fun.
Yeah.
But it's vital.
It is. And it's, it's hard to get everything right because I'm talking to people who are running a camp or an event in somewhere in the village of El Salvador. I am trying to fact check the best as I can, but it's hard to get every single thing down. So we try to do as best as we can beforehand. So you have to do a lot less after the fact if things are not verified, right? When it comes to claims, science, etc., you want to get it right.
Okay. I think you've told me enough. I'm convinced you're busy. How do we say, let's check in after the TED Talk to see how things go? Can you give me that in your home language?
Oh, which one?
The one
can
you're
say in
most
Hindi?
comfortable with. Yeah, Hindi.
Yeah, Hindi is fine. So, TEDSports Indianapolis के बाद मिलेंगे. So, see you after TEDSports Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
और आपको मेसन जी और Indianapolis Business Journal को धन्यवाद. That's thank you.
My thanks again to Neelay Bhatt. And folks, before you get on with the rest of your week, there are a few stories in this week's edition of IBJ I want to draw to your attention. First up, there's a method to the madness that is the NCAA Division I men's basketball tournament, and it relies on the collective efforts of thousands of NCAA and university staffers, contractors, local organizers, venue workers, and volunteers. Mickey Shuey takes us step-by-step through the process, including Indianapolis's hosting gig for the Midwest Regional. Also in this week's issue, Susan Orr explains how companies are quietly changing the way they talk about diversity, if not outright cutting back on DEI efforts. And Taylor Wooten details how local housing providers are preparing for potential cuts to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. You can find these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at ibj.com. I will say it's quite a bit easier to access all of the latest local business news and all of IBJ's data on Central Indiana's business community and economy if you're a subscriber. We're running a promotion right now that gives you complete access for $1 per week for 3 months, just to get a sense of how valuable and original our content is. Just go to ibj.com and click on the subscribe button. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ podcast. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.